Hi everybody, this is Don with Splat XD. I'm sitting across from Shawn Walker, former president of the NPPL and now current president of the RPL, a new regional paintball series, tournament series. Shawn, thanks for coming in and talking to us. Shawn, you know fully well that you're a pretty controversial figure these days. So before we get on to what you've got coming next, let's go in the Wayback Machine a little bit and let's talk about kind of how we got here.
Sure.
You were president of the NPPL. You started, when did you start?
As 2 years ago.
Take over is in
yeah, so
season, right?
this is the second. This was the end of the second season. I took over NPPL 2 years ago.
Okay, and one of the main reasons, as everybody all knows, Pacific Paintball, which owned the NPPL, has gone bankrupt and filed Chapter 7.
Yep.
Everybody's coming up with all the different reasons of why it happened.
Sure.
And your name keeps coming up whenever it comes up. So let's talk a little bit about when you first started. You've said in statements that for the most part it was the economy that was the main reason. Why don't you share with us kind of what you think went up to?
Well, I mean, everything starts with good intentions. I've been in the industry 15 years. I was running the XPSL for 5 years before even the NPPL started, very successfully. And I worked for the NPPL before we took over the NPPL as the general manager in 2006. So, I mean, I've been around for a long time. And, you know, the opportunity to hook up with Pacific Merchant Capital and Bruce Friedman and the group that put together Pacific Paintball was, you know, awesome. It was someone like, I've been growing up so much in tournament paintball. Here's someone with outside money coming in, excited about the sport of paintball. And that's where we were 2 years ago with the WDP group and Pure Promotions kind of on their way out. You know, Chuck and Bart took it as far as they could take it for those 5 years, and then it was time to see where we could go with it. And so at that point, you know, I hooked up with outside money, non-paintball people, as they say. And those non-paintball people, you know, just ran things and did things a little different, you know. And I was the paintball connection, and they were the non-paintball connection. They provided the money, tried to put together a stable company for these last 2 years. The problem just from get-go, though, was that they came on board thinking they were buying a cash flow positive company that they could infuse more cash into and then flip it or turn it or grow it to the next step. They're private equity people. They're not, you know, just crash and burn investment capital type people. Right. You know, and that's just what their mentality was. They weren't venture capitalists. They were private equity. And the problem was we weren't cash flow positive from day one. And it wasn't. You know, we were losing money. The tournaments were losing money. And I see this all the time. People say, oh, the tournament promoters make so much money. They're millionaires. You know, and there's not. I mean, there's no money to be made in tournament paintball, and that's evident by all the events that have come and gone over the last 10 years in the sport. And so it just, from that point, it went downhill. I mean, from the start, even from 2 years ago, you know, we started and kept on trying to turn the corner and could never do it. We didn't do it in 2007. We couldn't do it in 2008. And then that was the perfect storm. These private equity people said, hey, you know, we're in it for 2 to 5 years, and that's it. And after 2 years, it just didn't, there was no money to be made. So they're money people. They're not paintball people. It was time to take off, and that's what they did.
Early on, when you first took over, we were already feeling the crunch in paintball. Yep. Things were already starting to shrink. Companies were going away. Why didn't you, as president, start to make more cost-cutting decisions rather than continuing in NFL stadiums, purchasing a television show, that kind of thing?
Sure, that's a good question. And so in the beginning, again, I'm the paintball guy. You know, I know how to run paintball events. I've been successful, you know, literally hundreds of them over the last 10 years of paintball events. And I'm that guy. They were the money guys that say we can bring in the non-industry. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to bring it up a notch. They needed to put a showcase event together to get the Pepsis and the Coca-Colas and those type of sponsors on board. They felt it needed to be equal to like an X Games or an Action Sports Tour type level of event. They didn't want to put an event on in the back roads of a paintball field, you know, like we used to all do. They wanted the top end because that's how you go out and get more money. You don't do it by putting on just paintball events. You have to put on the show. And so that's what it was. And so in the beginning, I was told to execute the paintball events while they went out and, you know, packaged this with bows and tinsel and said, now we can go get these outside sponsors. So that's what we try to do. So, and that was my directive from day one, is like, we need to grow and get bigger. So the problem, though, with that, as you say, is we were building the infrastructure for a $15 million company, and we were only a $7 million company. Right. So, and that was what happened, you know, and we came to the point where you can't stay anymore. You can't always look for revenue and revenue not be there. So we kept on trying to operate a $15 million company with that infrastructure with not enough, with no revenue, for $7 million worth of revenue. It just didn't work.
And there was no point where you as president would come in and say, we need to scale this back. Maybe we need to put off the big show for a few years and build something up.
It's hard because, I mean, beginning of 2008, we had that talk. So the investors we just had 2007, we had just lost millions of dollars in 1 year. Obviously, that was a hard talk. It's like, okay, Shawn, now what are you going to do differently? What's going to happen different? So at the start of 2008, it was, let's cut everything we can back. So all the events in 2008 were trimmed back compared to 2007. So Huntington Beach was $200,000 less in expenses than HB the year before. And then we did Buffalo was cheaper. Buffalo was $150,000 cheaper than the Boston event the year before. The Jacksonville event was $300,000 cheaper than the Tampa event. So, I mean, we started trimming things back, but at the same time, revenue started trimming back. So less teams. So we're averaging 160 teams in 2007, but only averaged 130 teams in 2008. So we lost those 30 to 40 teams each event. Sponsors, we went from huge amounts of sponsors in 2005, 2006, and then 2007, and then we already got cut. And then in 2008, we got cut even bigger. And you mentioned that TV show, and we didn't want to put on a TV show in 2007, but the sponsors came to us and said, hey, we'll pay you for the TV show, but we got to be on TV. So that's what we did. We tried to execute the TV show. But I mean, you're right on. The industry was going down. We got the company was it was a great idea. It was a great people behind it. It was a great infrastructure. But we were on the way downhill, and we couldn't turn the corner. We just couldn't do it.
I see. Now let's move about to the actual fall of Pacific Paintball. I know everybody out there in internet land is burning for me to ask the right questions here, and so I want to do that. I want to serve the paintball community.
I'm here to answer them.
In the court filings made for the Chapter 7 of Pacific Paintball, there have been allegations made about your handling of the finances of the company. You've said that they were baseless.
I mean, basically, again, this was a multi-million-dollar company. So I had a controller who signed every check, who put every money into the bank and did everything. I mean, it wasn't Shawn Walker signing checks and Shawn Walker taking money here and writing a check out here. It was, I had a controller, and that accounted for every dollar and cents. Then that controller reported up to a CFO and a CEO and a board of accountants that were on us, daily. So anything that happened financially from about 2 months in from 2007 up until the company folded, all went through multiple hands. So it was literally impossible for me to write a check to this person or write a check to this person and no one know what was happening and know what's happening. So it's baseless. It didn't happen. But one of the things that we didn't click on, and the reason that I didn't click with the other investors, was on barter. And so in paintball, I grew up in this barter system. I always give the speech when I was in high school that I ran a paintball field in San Diego, and I went to my senior prom, with the limo, the hotel, the dinner was all traded out in barter for paintball groups. And just it was the life I know. It's just a barter and moving things around. And so I try to do that, and that's how I ran XPSL, and that's why I tried to run the NPPL, and I got problems from day one. It just didn't work out that way. But if we needed extra staff, I would try to barter out with a team to provide that staff, and so they could have their entry fee. If we had to get a booth space or we had to get shirts made up, I'd try to barter with the vendor to do that. And so that's where the fuzzy area comes in, and that's where this fuzzy area says, that they thought and they feel still that is stealing, that's misappropriation of funds or taking things away by having a barter agreement with somebody, which was all signed in contract and signed by everyone in the company. But that's where this fuzziness happens, and I stick by it. I mean, I stick by all my decisions, stick by every barter agreement out there and everything I made, and documented everything and had everything in writing, and every deal was financially feasible and viable for the company, and we made a profit off that. But and every team out there, in internet land and not, I know, say, I dealt with Shawn and he helped me out here. I dealt here and he helped me out here. So that's where this fuzziness happens. But there was no misappropriation of funds in the sense. This was just a way for them to, on their way down, the ship is going down, and here's a way to throw Shawn's name and try to, drag it through the mud, whatever you can, on the way down.
Well, I mean, that might be true for something like a press release or just an interview. Sure. But when you're filing court papers, there's a huge penalty for what would be the equivalent of a libel suit on your part.
Oh, you mean so if I could go back after them, but who do I go after? So we talked about this. So like my lawyers have talked about this. There's no one to go after. They basically, the company is closing the doors. They sign these paperwork and submit it to the government and said, hey, we can't make it happen, and here's what we say is happening. I mean, that's where it's at. So it's like I can't say that they lied about it. I can't go after them because there's no them anymore to go after. So now I just have to get in line with everybody else and ask for my money back because they owe me tens of thousands of dollars, which I wasn't listed in any of the paperwork as people owed. I put all the expenses for the last few events on my credit card. When I